The sound came first. Not a crash, not a scream, just the low, terrifying groan of metal shifting where it wasn't supposed to move, a slow surrender, gravity winning. 1 second, everything was fine. The next, 4,000 pounds of steel dropped without warning. He didn't have time to react. He didn't have time to think. The jack stand slipped, the frame shifted, and the car came down hard enough to rattle the concrete beneath it. Pinned underneath was a man who had spent his entire life believing one thing: if something breaks, you can fix it. His 12-year-old son watched it happen. That moment didn't end with an ambulance or a headline. It ended quietly in shock, with bruises instead of broken bones. But what it destroyed wasn't visible. Something far deeper cracked open. Because for the first time, skill wasn't enough. Experience wasn't enough. Grit didn't matter. Luck had saved him. And luck is not something you can rebuild. To understand why that moment mattered so much, you have to understand where he came from. Because his entire identity was built on the belief that survival comes from knowing how to work with your hands. He was born on May 16, 1984, in Minot, North Dakota, a place defined by long winters and short patience. Snow didn't decorate the land there, it buried it. Roads vanished, engines froze solid, and if something failed when the temperature dropped, it could cost you more than money. His family lived in a small white farmhouse surrounded by flat fields and open sky. No neighbors close enough to help. No stores you could run to when something broke. Out there, self-reliance wasn't a philosophy. It was law. His father farmed the land the same way his father had before him. Long hours, frozen mornings, machinery held together by knowledge more than parts. There were no warranties, no replacements, only repairs. If equipment broke, you didn't curse it. You fixed it. If you couldn't fix it, you figured out why. Those lessons started early. By the time most kids were learning how to read, he was learning how things came apart. Toys didn't last long in his hands, not because he was careless, but because curiosity got to them. Screws lined up neatly on the floor. Springs examined. Plastic shells set aside. No one stopped him. His father watched quietly and nodded. The barn became his classroom. Tractor engines his textbooks. The smell of oil mixed with cold air. The sound of tools clinking in the silence. He learned by watching, listening, and eventually doing. Money was always tight. Waste was never tolerated. If something had parts, it had potential. Family dinners turned into lessons about reuse. Scrap piles weren't junk, they were inventory. Bolts were saved, wires were straightened. Old machines were stripped, not for nostalgia, but for survival. By 7, he was fixing broken farm tools using discarded hardware. By 9, he rebuilt a wagon from 3 dead machines. By 13, he found his grandfather's old Ford truck rusting behind a shed and decided it deserved another chance. No manuals, no fancy tools, just borrowed wrenches and stubborn patience. 14 freezing nights later, the engine fired. That moment wasn't just mechanical, it was personal. It proved something important. Problems weren't walls, they were puzzles. At 7, he didn't ask for a toy. He built one. A go-kart made from a baby stroller frame and a lawnmower engine. It cost less than $10. It rattled. It looked ridiculous, but it moved. He drove it through open fields like it was brand new. And once you build one thing, you start thinking about the next. By high school, he stood apart. While classmates tried to scrape by, he rebuilt engines bolt by bolt, cleaning every part, drawing diagrams, taking notes no one asked for. He didn't do it for praise. He did it because understanding mattered more than speed. When money ran out, he bought broken cars. When parts were too expensive, he went to junkyards. When a welding mistake fused his finger to metal at 17, he didn't quit. He studied safety, learned from pain, adjusted. After graduation, he enrolled in automotive technology classes. Most students left when the clock hit quitting time. He stayed, cleaning parts until midnight, cataloging bolts, reassembling engines with surgeon-level precision. He wasn't fast. He was exact. That habit slow, methodical, deliberate, would become his signature long before anyone knew his name. Then came the military. At 18, he joined the U.S. Army. They trained him not as a mechanic, but as an information technology specialist, satellite systems, communications, systems that had to work no matter what. Long shifts, high pressure, no room for panic. Then Iraq. At 20 years old, he found himself on patrol near Baghdad when a convoy vehicle lost power. No time, no cover. Failure wasn't an option. While others froze, he crawled underneath, traced wires by flashlight, found a fried relay, bypassed it with scraps and hand tools. The vehicle moved. Lives moved with it. Later, he wrote, simple diagnostic software soldiers could use in the field. Built custom wiring harnesses from scavenged parts. Fixed machines that weren't meant to be fixed outside a shop. Word spread. When things went wrong, they called him. When he came home at 23, he carried discipline, calm, and a refusal to panic. He bought a rusted Camaro and rebuilt it in his parents' driveway. Cold nights, frozen hands, every bolt cleaned, every wire redone. That effort paid off. At a dealership, he tore through transmissions others avoided. Hundreds of them. Difficult models. Tight tolerances. He didn't rush. He didn't guess. He studied where others quit. By 26, he was managing teams. By 30, he was leading operations across regions. He introduced systems that reused salvaged parts, not because it was cheaper, but because it was smarter. Costs dropped. Trust grew. Morale climbed. Executives noticed. By 30, he was CEO. Then came the betrayal. Late nights. Financial reports that didn't sit right. Numbers that whispered something was wrong. He didn't hand it off. He dug in himself. Fake invoices. Phantom vendors. Hundreds of thousands gone. The thief wasn't an outsider. It was his CFO. Instead of burying it, he acted. Tracked the money. Recovered most of it. Fired the culprit. Pressed charges. Told his team everything. That moment changed how people saw him. Not just a leader, but a protector. Still, something inside him was breaking. Boardrooms, politics, pressure, endless decisions. The man who could fix engines felt stuck in systems that couldn't be repaired with a wrench. At night, he escaped to a garage. Not to build a business. Not to chase views. Just to breathe. He filmed himself working. No polish. No script. Just rust, mistakes, laughter, frustration. The camera wasn't the point. The work was. People found it. Not because it was perfect, but because it was real. Viewers didn't want studio lights. They wanted honesty, grease-stained hands, problems that didn't resolve neatly. The audience grew quietly. Then suddenly, millions watched a man revive forgotten machines, not because he was flashy, but because he refused to fake anything. But life didn't stop testing him. Hackers attacked. Channels disappeared overnight. Equipment was stolen. Projects failed mid-journey. Cars broke down miles from home. Each time he adapted, explained, shared lessons, turned setbacks into education. Then came the moment that changed everything. Late 2023. Cold concrete. Rusted exhaust bolt. Oil slick beneath him. One careless shift. The jack stand slipped. 4,000 pounds dropped. Pinned. Trapped. His son watched. Somehow he pulled free. No broken bones. No headlines. But something inside shattered. That night, the family sat together in silence. Then decisions were made. No more shortcuts. No more rushing. Safety before content. Life before deadlines. Upload slowed. The tone shifted. People speculated. Burnout. Disappearance. The truth was simpler. He wanted to live. From that point on, every build changed. Jack stands doubled. Wheels chalked. Movements deliberate. He never said, "I almost died." He didn't have to. The message was clear. Later projects focused less on chaos and more on intention. Even when engines seized or parts failed, he walked viewers through every mistake, not to entertain but to teach. Not about speed, about doing it right. By 41, the numbers were staggering. Millions of followers, millions in value, thousands of machines brought back from the dead. But none of that mattered as much as the sound of his kids laughing while handing him tools. They weren't extras. They were learning. His wife wasn't behind the scenes. She was beside him. That rhythm, that unpolished family noise, was the real connection. Not content. Life. When he teased a book, it wasn't about winning races. It was about fear, pressure, healing, knowing when to slow down. He wasn't stopping. He was changing lanes. And when he talked about giving back, about funding scholarships for kids from the same frozen town he came from, it felt complete. Because, in the end, this was never a story about cars. It was about a man who learned that fixing machines is easy. Fixing yourself is harder. And making it home at the end of the day, that's the only win that truly matters.